Log in to KofiPiesieTV.com and get Spears of the Mossi Volume 1 by Kofi Piesie Research Team. From Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Piesie Research Team. Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Piesie Research Team. One Night Before Bed by Herit, Shawn, Khalfani. Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Piesie. From Cocaine to Consciousness by Herit, Shawn, Khalfani. As I learned, we all learn by Kofi Piesie. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPiesieTV.com.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They're in. They're here.
All right, peace, family. Hey, I see Shawn in the chat already, man. It don't make no sense. We're gonna have to show Shawn what's up, man, when we all meet up. Um, anyways, welcome back to Kofi Piesie Research Team, Kofi Piesie TV. Yeah, man, we got a little bit of breaking down to do today. I've been kind of on this identity crisis thing, so that's what we're getting into today. Got my brothers Satep and Ra and Sutek on the panel. Turn it over to my brothers to say what's up to y'all before we get into it.
Hey, peace to the fam. Shay Alafia your brother Sutek. We black at you again on Kofi Piesie TV. This is another production of Kofi Piesie Research Team. Make sure y'all please like the show. If y'all come in, make sure y'all please share the show to at least 3 groups. Share the show to at least 3 groups. Help us spread the message of this information and these detrimental conversations that we're kicking. We don't ask for cash apps. We don't ask for PayPals. We don't ask for handouts. What we're asking now is just for you to share the show to at least 3 groups. That's all we need. We appreciate y'all for coming through, though, man. And we're gonna get into this conversation about the old Macks. So I'm gonna turn it over to the brothers until we get started. Peace.
All right, peace, family. It's your brother Satep and Ra, Mariaman. Like he said, man, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're gonna see what this video talking about with the old man.
All right, cool. So before we get into the video, because y'all already know what we do over here. We're not just really trying to entertain anybody. Like, that's really not the focus. If you're entertained by being educated and educating yourself and learning, then you in the building, you're in the right place to be. But if you focus on that nonsense, you can go somewhere else. Now, I'm going to show the copyright from the last show because we will be playing some content. We're going to be breaking down the video. So let me share my screen. Man, I'll tell you, technology be wanting to do what they want to do, and I'll just wait a second so it can go ahead and register on the other side. And y'all let me know when I'm good.
Yeah, you sharing, but well, you was sharing, but it was breaking up a little bit.
Can y'all hear me?
Oh, we fell out. Let me see. Let me see. Can I find the video that we talking about? There you go.
Yeah, man.
You
Yeah,
sound good
Sutek,
now.
I was gonna ask if you or Satep could play the video. I don't know why I do that. Every time I try to share my screen, it won't even let me present or do whatever I'm trying to do.
All right, I got it. Yeah.
But first, I wanted to make sure that the copyright was shown so that we don't get a strike. I got it pulled up, but you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I got one.
All right. Oh, Shawn says it's in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know what Shawn talking about. Yeah, so let me see. Hold on, let me make sure screen is showing. Yep, good to go. All right. What the hell? Why is it doing that? Okay, here we go. Yeah, copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Just reading it just for the full effect. So YouTube, I'll act like you don't see this. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So just to let YouTube know, we are protected under the copyright disclaimer, Section 107 of the Copyrights Act of 1976. So I'm gonna stop sharing that, and we're gonna get to the video. Here we go.
Appreciate you, Sutek. And like I said, we're gonna do it like 5-minute, segments so that we can have time to interact with the chat and what y'all think about what was said. Cause first 5 minutes you're gonna have something to say. So that's how we're gonna do it.
All right, I'm gonna start playing it.
In 1939, Matthew Sterling had just arrived in Veracruz, Mexico for a new season of excavations at the site of Tres Zapotes. Sterling was searching for answers about a relatively recently identified civilization in Mexico, the Olmec. Tres Zapotes had already been identified as an Olmec site, but at the time, not much was known about Olmec civilization. There was only a delicate consensus about who the Olmec were. Most scholars assume that this civilization was a fairly recent player in Mesoamerican history, and that they would have been contemporary with classical Maya in the second half of the first millennium CE. It wasn't an unreasonable conclusion at the time. Remember, this was before carbon dating was being used in archaeology, and back then the best way to date Mesoamerican civilizations was by stratigraphy, or even better, by cataloging the dates on their monument inscriptions. Sterling, however, suspected that this civilization was much older. Unfortunately for Sterling, he had no hard proof to back up his theories. That is until one day when he chanced upon an incredible discovery, a broken Olmec stela with a partial date inscription. Although the second half of the date inscription was missing, he and his wife Marion deduced that the date on the stela was September 3rd, 32 BCE, by far the oldest written date ever recorded in Mesoamerica. When this was published, it was hailed as a great... Oh, wait, actually, no. It was immediately derided by their colleagues as the incredulous result of overenthusiastic speculation. Everyone insisted that the Olmec civilization could not have been that old. Bummer. But not for long. As luck would have it, the Sterlings would be vindicated in the ensuing decades by carbon dating and later by the discovery of the rest of the stela by a local farmer, which allowed archaeologists to verify the Sterlings' proposed date. They had been right all along. This discovery stunned the academic world. It proved the true antiquity of the Olmec and showed that they were the first major civilization in Mesoamerica. Last episode, we examined the Norte Chico, one of the first civilizations of the Americas. In it, we discussed how the Peruvian coast was a cradle of American civilization and how those pre-ceramic civilizations laid important foundations for later Andean cultures. But Peru was not the only cradle in the Americas. In Mesoamerica, there was another one on the Mexican coast. So just like we did in our last episode, let's examine the origins of Mesoamerican civilization by exploring its first great civilization, the Olmec. Many aspects of Mesoamerican culture, such as calendars, ball games, and the Mesoamerican pantheon, can be traced back to Olmec influences. And these influences were tremendous. Before we can discuss the Maya, the Zapotec, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs, we need to examine the Olmec and their contributions to Mesoamerican civilization. Unfortunately, the Olmec left us no discernible written histories, nor any oral traditions. All that is known about the Olmec comes to us from archaeology or from the study of subsequent cultures. As much as we know about the Olmec, we are clueless about some basic facts, like the language they spoke or what they called themselves. In fact, the name Olmec comes from the word Olmen, a Nahuatl word meaning rubber people. Rubber was produced by the region's inhabitants as far back as Olmec times, all the way until European contact, hence the name. Just keep in mind that Olmec is the name retroactively applied to them by modern scholars. It's not a name that they would have used themselves. Before Olmec civilization arose, the people of Mesoamerica had only recently begun living a sedentary lifestyle. What made this shift possible was the domestication of crops like gourds, squash, beans, avocados, and chilies, but above all, corn, or as we ought to refer to it, maize. Maize was first domesticated in Mexico between 7000 BCE and 6500 BCE, and it would change everything as it was cultivated more and more intensively. So important was maize to the Mesoamericans that most cultures had a maize deity in some form. On an interesting side note, maize was originally domesticated from the teosinte plant. It's a testament to their agricultural prowess that this tiny grass was fashioned into one of the most important staple crops in the world. I mean, just look how tiny those cobs are. If you aren't very impressed by maize, I'd also like to point out that the Olmec were the first civilization to have chocolate. So let's take a moment to thank the Olmecs for helping bestow chocolate on this cruel world, and then let's get back to our topic. By the beginning of the second millennium BCE, civilization was beginning to take shape. What's fascinating about the development of Mesoamerican civilization is that it occurred very late compared to other early civilizations. But when it did, it blossomed with astonishing speed. Archaeologist Brian Fagan sums this up excellently.
A vast chasm separates the thousands of farming villages scattered throughout Central America in 2000 BC and the sophisticated civilizations that arose with dramatic suddenness only 1500 years later.
Nothing epitomizes that drastic change better than the rise of the Olmec. For over 1,000 years, from 1700 BCE to the end of the first millennium BCE, the Olmec were a cultural juggernaut in Mesoamerica. Despite being largely confined to the Mexican Gulf Coast in the modern states of Veracruz and Tabasco, the Olmec exercised an oversized influence over Central America. Unlike their contemporaries, the Olmec were living in large, planned urban settlements with elite residences, workshops, and rich, elaborate tombs. The best known of these sites is the city of La Venta, which thrived from 900 BCE to 400 BCE. La Venta has a planned layout with many temple mounds surrounding a main plaza. The main feature of the site is its Great Pyramid. It's been badly eroded in the millennia since its construction, but surveys and excavations show that it was a large rectangular pyramid with stepped sides, much like later pyramids in Mesoamerica. These are all features that we're going to see later in Mesoamerican cities. This wasn't just a city of corn farmers, although there were a lot of those. It was an economic and cultural hub, home to merchants, artists, sculptors, priests, and a ruling elite. La Venta is not an isolated example. Other Olmec cities have their own monuments. The fact that the Olmec elite
Okay, yeah. We 7 minutes in. Okay, cool. So be so kind, brother, to rewind back to where he had the civilizations and their timelines up.
You said the civilizations were okay. Here you go. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're talking about right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Will be a play.
So no. You keep it paused. Yeah. So, and peace to everybody coming in the chat. I feel like academia is always pushing for outlining a civilization outside of Africa, particularly Egypt, being older than Egypt, and usually particularly with Sumeria, where it has to be. That's a problem for me. Um, because as much digging as they do, as many artifacts as the British Museum houses alone, is just is at this point in the game, we understand why they started doing that, because they was, that was when the whole game was in full effect in terms of like outright in your face chattel slavery. That was the name of the game. And then trying to cover things up with whitewashing the history and things like that. But now, UNESCO conferences done happen, particularly 74 UNESCO conference. You know what I'm saying? Our greats done came and went, whose shoulders we stand on. And, even to this day, a lot of academia, Oriental Institute here in Chicago, they push the narrative. They got this little bitty Middle Eastern section. And then we got this whole rest of the exhibit. It's full of Nubia and Egypt. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, with the Olmecs, and as we're going to get into the video, these are people who have a set of traditions. They live in a tropical, hot kind of place. And so they have certain rituals and they have certain things about them, certain general aspects of their culture. We could draw vast similarities and look at that. Okay. But a lot of things look like each other in nature, like a lot. A lot of different animals look like each other, will mimic each other purposely. Run across the wrong one, that's your last little hike you taking. And I think we take that for granted, not really dealing with nature on that aspect. You have to take it to that level to really understand and keep things in perspective. That's the beauty of studying nature. It keeps things in perspective. And so my purpose for today's show is to outline how we shouldn't just jump to be trying to be somebody, even because, oh, Unc said so. Not Unc West, of course, shout out. But we talking about, good old Van Sertima. He had his time, he had his reasons, he had his life. You know what I'm saying? And came and went. I wish nothing bad on the family or nothing like that, or nothing bad. I don't have nothing negative to say in that aspect personally. But we do critique. We deal with information. And that kind of line of thinking just won't cut it for us. It's just getting started, but any of you brothers or let me check the chat. You brothers got something that y'all want to say before we keep going?
Yeah, I'm curious about the dates. Like, what are they based on? Like, because we saying Egypt, first Egypt dynasties, but why are we going off the dynasties? It was a pre-dynastic Egypt as well. Like, so they kind of like discounting that. Also, I feel like if we talking about civilization, what would help if we come to a consensus on the guidelines of civilization, or If we come to a consensus on what we are referring to specifically when we say civilization, it'll be much easier to handle this. But I digress, though. We could get more into it and see what else they got going on.
What about you, Satep? I don't know if he walked away.
Nah, I'm still here. Go ahead, keep building, man. I'm gonna get in there.
All right.
Let me unshare because I forgot to share the audio. Let me unshare. Share again.
Peace to everybody coming in too.
Yeah, man. Peace to the chat. Peace to the chat. Again, I'm gonna tell y'all, man. We need y'all to share the stream in at least 3 groups. Help us out.
With astonishing speed. Archaeologist Brian Fagan sums this up excellently.
A vast chasm separates the thousands of farming villages scattered throughout Central America in 2000 BC and the sophisticated civilizations that arose with dramatic suddenness only 1,500 years later.
Nothing epitomizes that drastic change better than the rise of the Olmec. For over 1,000 years, from 1700 BCE to the end of the first millennium BCE, the Olmec were a cultural juggernaut in Mesoamerica. Despite being largely confined to the Mexican Gulf Coast in the modern states of Veracruz and Tabasco, the Olmec exercised an oversized influence over Central America. Unlike their contemporaries, the Olmec were living in large, planned urban settlements with elite residences, workshops, and rich, elaborate tombs. The best known of these sites is the city of La Venta, which thrived from 900 BCE to 400 BCE. La Venta has a planned layout with many temple mounds surrounding a main plaza. The main feature of the site is its Great Pyramid. It's been badly eroded in the millennia since its construction, but surveys and excavations show that it was a large rectangular pyramid with stepped sides, much like later pyramids in Mesoamerica. These are all features that we're going to see later in Mesoamerican cities. This wasn't just a city of corn farmers, although there were a lot of those. It was an economic and cultural hub, home to merchants, artists, sculptors, priests, and a ruling elite. La Venta is not an isolated example. Other Olmec cities have their own monuments. The fact that the Olmec elite could commission such huge public works speaks to the sophistication of Olmec society. But what exactly were they commissioning? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at Olmec art to find out. Nothing highlights the Olmec better than their distinctive and recognizable art. Their most iconic and well-known works are by far their colossal heads. Even if you've never studied the Olmec, you've probably seen pictures of them in a textbook or on TV. These heads are gigantic. Each one is carved from a huge block of basalt. The nearest source of this is all the way in the Tuxtla Mountains, which means that they had to not only be carved, but moved huge distances. Remember, there are no draft animals in Mesoamerica. You can't just strap some oxen and mules to those boulders and tell them to move. They could only be moved by human labor. The organization and effort to move these from quarries to the cities and ceremonial centers must have been enormous. As far as we know, they could have been dragged overland or perhaps transported on balsa rafts via the local rivers, but no one is certain. But what are these sculptures exactly? Most scholars agree that these heads represent Olmec rulers, as each one is distinct and no two portray the same person. Each head has a helmet or headgear. The heads are very recognizable for their realism and their broad facial features, like their flat noses and full lips. These striking features have actually caused some to theorize that the heads are sculptures of Africans, but these theories are rejected by Mesoamerican scholars, and I'll have more to say about these views later. In total, there are 17 heads that have been discovered at various Olmec sites. These range in size from just under 5 feet to 11 feet tall. The largest head is over 25 tons. To put that in perspective, that's more than the weight of 2 school buses. One interesting thing I discovered while making this episode is that there are actually several replica Olmec heads across the United States. If you ever pay a visit to the Field Museum in Chicago, City College of San Francisco, Lehman College at the City of New York, the Smithsonian, or the University of Texas in Austin, you can see one of these replicas. Pretty cool. As impressive as the Olmec heads are, they were not the only colossal sculpture crafted by the Olmec. They also carved massive stone altars, each from a single block of
Where we
basalt
at with the
weighing over
time, Sultan?
40 tons. Actually, the term altar is a bit of a misnomer. When these were first excavated,
Yeah, we're coming up on 10 minutes. So you want me to stop here or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, let it go for about another minute or two.
Okay.
they were believed to be altars, but experts are pretty certain that these huge blocks were actually thrones for rulers. The reason for this is that there's actually images and sculptures of rulers sitting on these altars. Each throne contains a niche with a man sitting in a cave, either holding a baby with jaguar features or a rope, sometimes both. In many later Mesoamerican cultures, caves are an entrance to the supernatural world, so this imagery is very evocative. Remember this because caves are going to come up later in the episode. As these monuments show, the Olmec were masters at shaping stone, and these monuments are only the tip of the iceberg. One of the finest examples of Olmec sculpture is the wrestler. This seated figure is portrayed in a realistic and dynamic way that is seldom seen in Mesoamerica. Another important piece comes from a burial in La Venta. This group of small jade figurines were found posed around a central figure in a very striking scene. No one is certain what this is depicting, but it definitely fires up the imagination. Is this a scene from Olmec mythology, a ruler's court, or a scene from the deceased's life? We don't know, but it is pretty cool to think about.
All right, I'll stop right there. Transition period.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do when I'm viewing content on YouTube or however I'm getting my information, I'm listening to what is being said and what's not being said. And then I'm also thinking about what I know, especially if I'm doing comparative studies, what I know about another culture. And if they have similar ideas and traditions and rituals, especially if there's purportedly a connection between the two cultures, like West Africa and said people we learning about today. Now, I don't know about y'all, but to my knowledge, in coastal West Africa, they don't think caves are an entrance into a quote unquote supernatural world, universe, life, or anything, an underworld, or anything like that. I'm not saying that I'm going to speak for every kind of culture in West Africa and say it don't exist. Like those people don't have caves and they might think their caves lead to one of the afterlives in their traditions. It's very well possible. But what I'm saying is, based on the parts of traditions of people that I have studied so far, and these people are right off the coast of West Africa, we don't find a similarity there. We don't even find the same iconography, like with the statues and all that kind of stuff, with the figurines. We don't draw our figurines the same way. I mean, we carve our figurines the same way. So those are cultural nuances that you want to look for when you're learning about a group of people. You're like, oh, well, they said that these people do this. Well, what do we do in West Africa?
So you trying to tell me them big ass lips and that nose ain't from Africa?
I mean, we can bust that out too in terms of look at where they're placed. You know,
Mm.
that equatorial. What we talking about? Equatorial zone one stretch around the world, 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So going along the equator, every civilization along the equator, Cambodia, right, Thailand, those kind of places, um, India, right? You got what is quote unquote a big misnomer that we all use is the Middle East. There's really no such thing because it's kind of that's very derogatory and very colonistic when you say that. Like you're just grouping a whole bunch of different cultures together. Um,
Yeah,
and then
it's really
but
no. I ain't mean to cut you off. It's really no. It's really no abstract to the art, and that's one thing I noticed about West Africa. Um, that we do like it's some type of abstract component to the art. Theirs is just these Olmec heads are just they're more realism. Like even the regular faces of the art in West Africa, you're gonna see some of it may be a little distorted. Um, it's not gonna look exactly like the people. You could put some of those people in that region from the area where these Olmec heads are found side by side, and it'll damn near look exactly like them. Uh, but in West Africa, you see something different. You don't see that realism there. It's more abstract, and I don't see that with any of these Olmec heads or with the art period.
hmm and well, Satep, I'm sure he'll pop in when he say you're ready to pop in the bill. But yeah, that's definitely that's big, and yeah, let's keep it going because um it's about to get juicy now. Now we're about to really get into a few more. Let it go to like 21.
Olmec art is one of the best tools we have in reconstructing their religion and their beliefs. When we examine Olmec art with a knowledge of later culture, we can see important religious concepts taking shape. Remember those babies from the thrones we just talked about? Let's take a closer look at those. Babies abound in Olmec art, usually on the chubby side. Many of these babies, just as the ones on the thrones, have jaguar features. This is a very common theme in Olmec art, and scholars call these babies were-jaguars, like werewolves, but instead a were-jaguar. These depict people that are in the process of transforming into jaguars. They have snarling, fanged mouths, upturned lips, and sometimes even claws. These images are not just limited to children. There are also examples of adult transformations, as well as transformations into other animals like birds, sharks, and crocodiles, but were-jaguars are the most common. They appear in ritual axes carved from greenstone and other materials. Were-jaguars occupied an important place in Olmec religion, and it's believed that some of these were-jaguars are shamans in a state of transformation. Shamanism was an important element in Olmec and later Mesoamerican religions. They are not unique to Mesoamerican culture. You can find shamans in many parts of the world, even today. Shamans interact with the spiritual world by taking hallucinogens to enter an altered state of consciousness. In this state, Olmec shamans could transform into animal spirits and enter the supernatural world, and through it, influence the real world. A shaman might want to influence the growth of crops or the coming of rain to sustain his people. Shamans were very important people in the Olmec community, and it's no wonder that we find so much representation of them in their art. However, some of these were-jaguars also show us a picture of proto-deities that will appear in later Mesoamerican religions. One piece that exemplifies this is the Lalimas figure. The sculpture is of a man holding yet another were-jaguar baby, but what makes it significant are the inscriptions carved into the man's body. It's very hard to see in this picture, but there are 4 icons carved into his shoulders and knees. Scholars have pointed out that these icons have distinct features later associated with Mesoamerican deities. These features are very diagnostic, and we can use them to identify specific later deities. For example, on his right shoulder, we have Xipe Totec, the god of spring and regeneration. He's also known as the flayed god. On the left, we have what is believed to be the fire god, or the fire serpent as he's also known. On the left knee, we have the god of death. On the right knee is the feathered serpent, more commonly by its Aztec name, Quetzalcoatl, and by the Maya as Coculcan. He's going to be a big figure in later Mesoamerican religion. The cradled infant has been identified as the main god due to the decorated band above his head. Here's another image of a were-jaguar maize god. These are some of the earliest images we have of the Mesoamerican pantheon. These show that important deities had their origin among the Olmec, but gods aren't the only elements of Mesoamerican mythology depicted in Olmec art. At the Olmec site of El Azuzul, archaeologists unearthed 2 statues of identical twins. For anyone familiar with the Maya creation story, the Popol Vuh, these identical twins should be ringing a bell. These are believed to be the hero twins from the story. Twins feature very prominently in the heroic literature and art of Mesoamerica, but this is one of the earliest examples we have of a depiction of twins. Again, when we talk about Mesoamerican mythology in later episodes, think back to the Olmec and think back to this sculpture. One final religious practice that appears to have its origin in Olmec culture is bloodletting. An intact tomb at La Venta contains a stingray spine and other instruments that many scholars believe were used to draw blood. Bloodletting, or auto-sacrifice as it's also called, played an important role in later Mesoamerican religions. By offering up their blood, rulers and priests could ritually contact their revered ancestors and ask for their intercession in the spiritual world. This was a vital element of kingship during the later classical period, and we're going to see it come up again. Religion and art were not the only legacy of Olmec culture. Perhaps one of the greatest Olmec achievements was their use of the Mesoamerican calendar and the long count. There's a lot of debate over the exact source of the Mesoamerican calendar, but the Olmec played a huge role in spreading it across Mesoamerica. If you want to learn more about the calendar and its significance, you're in luck because we've already covered that in a previous episode. But I'll just hit the highlights here. The calendar was a universal feature of nearly all Mesoamerican cultures, and it underpinned all ceremonial and religious life. We see this calendar used by the Maya, the Mixtec, the Aztecs, the Zapotecs, and others. To say it was widespread and successful is an understatement. Not only that, the Olmec also had a written numerical system with which they could write dates. We open this episode with one such example. This allowed the Olmecs to do something no one else could do, to record their history in writing. Now, the ability to write numbers poses another important question. Usually when counting is being recorded, writing usually follows. Did the Olmecs follow this progression to writing and spread it to other areas of Mesoamerica? That's a question fraught with a lot of debate. You see, writing pops up in the late formative period in multiple places: the Olmec heartland, the Valley of Oaxaca, and the Maya highlands. But a common ancestors of these scripts is elusive, and there's very little consensus over who came first, who influenced the other. It's very much open for debate. During this time, Olmec writing was abundant. The Epi-Olmec were writing elaborate monumental inscriptions. The best example is the La Mojara stela from the Tres Zapotes area. This enormous basalt stela shows a figure, most likely a ruler, next to a lengthy inscription. We can tell from the date inscription on the stela that it's from the end of the late formative period. Unfortunately, the script remains undeciphered, and all attempts to decipher it have been unsuccessful. But as cool as that is, we need to dig deeper to find the earliest Olmec writing. If you want to go back as far as possible to witness the purported origins of writing, You'll arrive at the El Cascajal block that was found near the Olmec city of San Lorenzo. It features several rows of hieroglyphs, although the nature of these glyphs is disputed by some scholars. This block dates from about 1000 to 900 BCE, but the hieroglyphs do not resemble any other Mesoamerican script. Could this be a proto-script? Or possibly a dead end? It's hard to say. But the most compelling artifacts come later from the La Venta area. The first we will examine is a cylinder seal found 2002 that dates to approximately 650 BCE. What makes this seal so interesting is that it contains a bird with a speech scroll coming from its mouth that ends in 2 hieroglyphs, just like a character in a comic strip. These 2 hieroglyphs are similar to those of later Mayan and Isthmian writing. Greenstone fragments from the site show glyphs with similarities to other scripts as well. An Olmec statue found in La Blanca on the Pacific coast, far away from the Olmec heartland, shows similar hieroglyphs as well. With this in mind, some scholars believe that there's an argument to be made that writing first originated in the Olmec heartland and then was dispersed throughout Mesoamerica. It should be noted, once again, that these claims are a bit controversial and the matter is not settled. Any day now, a new discovery could easily change how we see the origins of Mesoamerican writing. What is clear is that the Olmec were early adopters of writing and helped spread literacy throughout Central America. Another cultural legacy of the Olmec is the Mesoamerican ball game. The ball game was a huge fixture in Mesoamerica. Ball courts were a regular feature in urban design all over Mesoamerica and even beyond. If you've ever seen the ruins of a Mesoamerican city, you've probably seen the remains of a ball court. They're very distinct with their eye shape, their walls, and the alleyway between them. This picture here comes from the ball court at the Zapotec capital of Monte Alban. The ball game was not just a sport to pass the time, it was an important religious ritual that recreated mythology and brought communities together. A ball game symbolized the battle between good and evil and life and death, and usually culminated in the sacrifice of the losing captain, or maybe even the losing team. Like the calendar, it's possible that the ball game may have origins outside the Olmec heartland. No Olmec site has ever yielded a ball court. The oldest known ball court actually comes from the distant Soconusco region. However, at the Olmec site of El Manatee, rubber balls have been found dating back to 1500 BC, and these are the earliest ever found. These solid rubber balls were made by tapping rubber trees and fashioning the rubber into balls for the game. This is good evidence that the game was being played by the Olmec from a very early time, even if they weren't incorporating formal ball courts into their urban architecture. Or perhaps they were, and archaeology has yet to find them. Either way, the Olmec were among the earliest cultures playing the ball game in Mesoamerica.
Alright, so that's the 21-minute mark. It was balling.
Yeah, it's a lot of points of contention on this, man. 'Cause I see what Robert Rand on here talking about. I'm familiar with a little bit of this culture, and that ball game definitely didn't originate from the Olmecs. That ball game is a Mayan game. Now, some of the stuff they were saying, as far as it being a religious type of game, and some of the people may, at the end of the game die or whatever. That was correct, but yeah, that I don't. From my research, because I think the Mayans culture is older than the Olmecs, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, man, this video got a lot of points of contention in it.
Yeah, Robert Red going in. What you got to say, Sutek?
Man, this ain't my field, so I'm kind of just piggybacking off of what little I know. So, I mean, if y'all, whatever y'all consensus y'all got, I might be familiar with. I'm kind of multitasking, so I might have missed something.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not versed in terms of in depth who these people are and all that kind of stuff as much as maybe Robert or Tep and Ra or any others in the chat. But from the perspective of West Africa, as far as the comparative studies, saying that there's a connection for the cultural nuances, we don't find those connections there. You know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't exist. We don't. For one, we're not painting ourselves. We don't have the Jaguar, so there's no where Jaguars. There's no, you know what I'm saying? We got the cousin, we got the leopard, but we don't have the Jaguar. And we don't, as Sutek stated, with the art, it's different. We don't have the same understanding. Neither culture is mentioned in each other's culture. Like the Olmecs don't say anything about us. Like we're not these people. It's so many different angles that you approach that argument of Africans sailing over here and this, that, and the third. We want to make, because we're black, that we were everywhere and we invented everything before anybody. And we had all of the greatest modes of transportation before anybody. That's not what defines greatness. Oh, you was gonna say something, Sutek?
Nah, I was just gonna say, from a historical point of view, um, there's just no evidence. Just to put it plain and simple, like there's just no evidence for it. A lot of people like to use the Abu Bakari story, but it's not there. Nowhere in the story does it say anything about or infer anything about him coming to America or the Americas. Like it's just not there. So I mean, we kind of forcing something. I know we read Van Sertima's work, but we don't read these works just to take them for face value. You know what I'm saying? You gotta vet the sources. Um, and there's a lot of stuff that was missing from his argument. It's a lot of stuff that was incorrect from his argument. You know, some of that stuff is just you ain't have the access to the resources that we have today. But some of that stuff was just bad research. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, I'm gonna just call it how it is. If it was anybody else, I would say the same thing. Like it was some of that stuff was just bad research. So that's the main thing that we hang off of is Van Sertima's work. I mean, if you're not coming with that, then what else you coming with? Because there is no evidence. There's no historical evidence. There's no biological evidence, no archaeological evidence. There's no linguistic evidence, no cultural evidence. Like it's just non-existent.
Okay. See, we got some more people joining in the chat. Iron Lion Mike, Pure Black been in here for a while. I just didn't look at the chat. See, we got Kevin Chill in the building. Omar Reed from West Africa. Nahisi had popped in here too. Zane, brother Zane, Robert. All right, man. It's only a few more minutes left.
So how do we know that these ideas were spread so thoroughly throughout Mesoamerica? You might think it's because we see so many firsts among the Olmec, but the real reason is much more interesting. It's because Olmec artifacts and sites can be found all over Mesoamerica. The Olmec were not isolationists. They expanded and traded with their contemporaries all across Central America. The Olmecs were producing rubber, cacao, salt, and manufactured goods like fine pottery. The items they appeared to be trading for were jade and serpentine for crafting, obsidian for weapons and tools, and iron ore for mirrors. And this contact wasn't incidental. There's a lot of evidence for intense Olmec contact outside the heartland. A great example of this is the site of Chalcatzinco in the Valley of Morelos. That sheer mountain you see in the picture has long been considered sacred by indigenous peoples, and the Olmec may have considered this a sacred site as well. Between 700 and 500 BCE, the Olmec had a strong presence there and left spectacular bas-relief carvings into the rock cliffs. The location of Chalcatzingo also lies about halfway between the heartland and the mountain sources of obsidian. It would have behooved the Olmec to ensure that Chalcatzingo was on friendly terms. Another site, Teopan Tecuanitlan, all the way in the modern state of Guerrero, has a ceremonial sunken court flanked with an Olmec-style were-jaguar depiction of the maize god. Guerrero was an important trading partner with the Olmec because it was a source of high-quality jade, so Olmec presence here shouldn't be that much of a surprise. Elsewhere in Guerrero, the Juxtlahuaca cave features an extraordinary cave painting of a figure holding a captive bound by a rope. Other nearby caves show jaguars and even the feathered serpent. Remember the thrones we discussed earlier, replete with cave imagery? These caves likely held a spiritual significance, and the art there is not a coincidence. Other Olmec or Olmec-influenced sites can be found in Chiapas, the southern Guatemalan coast, and even as far as El Salvador. Now, all this begs the question, what was the nature of this contact? Are these sites evidence of a peaceful trading network or a violent intrada? There's no doubt that the Olmec had a warrior tradition. Violence pops up in Olmec art several times. But Olmec artifacts could just as easily be the result of trade items brought back from the Olmec heartland. Nobody really knows, but there's a lot of debate on the topic, and the real answer could easily be a combination of both. What's important about this, and what I want you to take away from it, is the sheer extent of Olmec contact within Mesoamerica. With this contact came the cultural and religious trappings that we've been discussing. Dr. Michael Coe summarizes this very well.
Where they did not go, or where their influence was unfelt, civilized life never took hold, not even in the 2.5 millennia that elapsed between them and the Spanish conquest. Beyond the frontier of the Olmec realm were the barbarians, the people without calendar, writing, and science, without great art, without states and civilized centers.
Now, before we wrap up this video, we need to discuss one last thing that everybody loves: conspiracy theories. As Mesoamerica's oldest civilization, the Olmec are at the center of many colorful, shall we say, alternate theories. There are scholars who have said that Olmec achievements in art were the result of an outside influence, most commonly from Africa, but you can also read about influences from China and Europe as well. Some people, most prominently among them Ivan van Sertima, have suggested that the Olmec colossal heads have African ethnic characteristics, specifically those broad noses and full lips, and thus it's proof of an ancient African contact with Mesoamerica. Among the many other points are that Mesoamerican pyramids are derived from the pyramids of Egypt and Nubia. I've read several of these, and I can assure you that they are painful to read. All Mesoamerican scholars that I've read agree that there is no substantiating evidence to these claims. Experts point out that these African features on the colossal heads are also shared by the indigenous people of the Veracruz region. They also point out that Mesoamerican pyramids have a well-documented evolution in history, one that is very distinct from the pyramids of Egypt. I also have not seen a shred of genetic or linguistic evidence to back these theories. On a lighter note, I would also like to add a personal observation that if any African or Asian civilization made contact with the Olmec, how on earth did they arrive in the only chocolate-producing region of the world and not bring chocolate back to the old world? Talk about a miss. But back to business. This kind of speculation is part of a much larger trend. There are lots of other conspiracy theories and pseudoscientific literature that'll tell you that some Native American achievement was the result of European, African, or Asian influence. These claims are, at best, the result of poor research and hurried speculation, and at worst, deliberate attempts to usurp Native American achievement. Such theories have very little merit and should not be taken seriously. Arguing that Old World inhabitants may have washed up in America or may have had a single episode of contact is one thing, but arguing that there was a sustained transoceanic contact with the Olmec or any other American civilization is baseless speculation. Fringe theories aside, the Olmec were an extremely successful civilization and left a huge impression on Mesoamerica. Olmec-style art can be found everywhere. Not only was it prolific, it was extremely long-lived. Olmec culture lasted over 1,000 years, but began to finally decline with the abandonment of La Venta in 400 BCE. Some later Olmec sites, most notably Tres Zapotes, soldiered on for a few more centuries before Olmec culture slowly faded away, replaced by newer civilizations who were now heirs to a towering legacy. I hope I've made it clear just how pivotal the Olmec were in spreading the use of the Mesoamerican calendar, religion, the ball game, and urban design. As the Olmec went, so did most of Mesoamerica. When we cover later topics of Mesoamerica, you'll hear the Olmecs popping up again and again, and you'll get a real appreciation for their legacy. And with that, I hope you've appreciated this episode on what many consider to
All right. Okay. So that was, nice little chunk, a little build to start with to check out some of the things that the guy was saying. Everything that's in the video, just question everything. Because there was a whole lot that was pushed, like starting back from the dates on to the end of the video. Like it's all types of stuff in there that can be questioned. um, yeah, I mean, overall, how do y'all feel
Yeah,
about
I
that?
mean, it's like with all information. At the end of the day, his views align with ours. We are not the people. He's not saying that they African people. So I mean, his dates may be a little different. His because I mean, at the end of the day, dude ain't an expert on the shit either. He probably just studying information like we studying and made a presentation about it. So, you know, I don't see too much really that much wrong with the video. You know what I'm saying? It's some stuff that we may disagree with as far as the dates and the Olmecs being the progenitors to certain aspects of Mesoamerican life. But I mean, I don't know. I ain't feel it was that bad of a presentation.
Yeah, like like Tip said, he don't know no better. He going off mainstream academia. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something with the dates. That's just something we have to work on getting changed in mainstream academia because that's all he using. Um, Not familiar with the basketball or the ball game uh, part of the culture, but yeah, he touched on Van Sertima. He just respectfully left it where it was. So I agree on that point too. I don't know though. Maybe it's some aspects, like I said though, maybe some aspects that I missed. Because as far as culture, I'm not that person. I know a little bit about culture. I'm more of a historical type of person. So
Yeah, well, I'm gonna stand bold and strong and say, yo, what I know about West Africa culturally, nah, bro. Mm-mm. Even within Africa, with the dances, I mean, we can get to telling you different Depending on what you're doing, where you're doing that dance step from, we're gonna know what part of Guinea you coming from, what part of Ivory Coast you coming from. I'm gonna know instantly if it's a mask involved, any kind of masquerade, stilt walking, chakaba. We're gonna know automatically. So yeah, we distinct people. And even in the times before the masquerade, before djembe, and before those things, those people had traditions and they had their own understanding because the geographical plane may be very similar, but there are variations. So instead of a leopard, you got a jaguar. Instead of this version of the snake, you got that version. So you have to deal with different things, and it's going to cause different rituals and different anthropomorphizations to go on because you're venerating it for different attributes. The snake on this side of the world has different attributes than the snake on that side of the world. Similar, but they're different. We have to understand that.
Yeah, I think another issue or another way that people approach it is the, the skin color. We look over at these civilizations and see that they were people of eumelanin or skin pigmentation, and we try to connect ourselves. So this is a reason that we have to, as our brother Unc says, become more scientifically literate because um, sub-Saharan Africans, black people, people like us, we do not own a monopoly. We do not have a monopoly on skin color. You know what I'm saying? So there's other populations in this world that are not closely related to us that share skin color with us. You know what I'm saying? We don't own that. It's in those tropical regions, in those equatorial regions, you're gonna see that because these people need more UV radiation protection. This is why y'all got to get volume three because I wrote specifically on that, and I went into it specifically because people try to use their argument, they're ignorant to what the situation is. So yeah, man, y'all got to get volume three, uh, spiritual combat, right? I think that we've been doing so many books, I don't even remember. But yeah, they like to use that. They like to use that, and that is not that's not scientific at all to say, oh, because they have uh their skin is dark and our skin is dark. That means we family. Yeah, I mean we family somewhere down the line, but we're not recently related to them. You know what I'm saying? So no, that you can't use the skin color argument. Anybody in those equatorial zones in those equatorial regions are going to need more ultraviolet radiation protection. So that's where your skin pigmentation or your the scientific term eumelanin comes in.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and linguistic traits or cultural traits tell a story. Absolutely. You look at those names, them names of those regions and we ain't got nothing to do with none of that at all. Tres Zapotes was the name of the region that the last of the Olmecs was supposed to be from. Nah, bro. We don't have a Latin persuasion like that going on with West African languages like that. No. Recently we have the Arabization in there, but that's understood. We know who been occupying North and all in that section of northern both sub-Saharan and Saharan Africa. We know that. Um,
I don't mean to cut you too, man, but yeah, we on the opposite end of the spectrum, like we brought Africanisms here, like we brought our culture here. We brought aspects of our languages. We bought aspects of deities. We bought aspects of the musical aspects. We bought the drums. You know what I'm saying? You can still look over there in the southern parts of America today and see a lot of this culture. Shit like capoeira. You can still see those drums being utilized. You can see it from the names of some of these monuments and some of the people left behind. You know what I'm saying? You can look, and BK does a great job of it, of showing some of the grave sites with these people with these names of the cultures and the geographical areas that they were connected to. So we know when we came over, where is that? If you're using the Van Sertima model, where is the culture that those West Africans brought over here? Where is that culture? Where's that West African culture in any of these ancient American cultures? And I use that term ancient loosely. But yeah, I just don't see it.
yeah, pure black say so, y'all. Source pseudo. Hey, man, it's not. See, the thing is, everybody got something to say about something and ain't studied enough. You know, even if we was all sitting on here on the panel, the three of us, and we had degrees in Africana studies, and we was, putting together a Sarum Hotep quality power presentations and breaking them on down 3 and 4 hours with the linguistic cognites or whatever our lanes is, right? Still ain't studied enough because you can never know it all. So it's always more to learn. It's always a way to perfect your craft. And when you so far down by level one, you such a beginner. It's like watching a rookie blow it. You're supposed to come out with a bang, debut, a rookie, superstar, get on the field, get on the court, whatever. And you're supposed to, you know what I'm saying, go for it. But if you're not ready and you jump out there and, yeah, your name can be well known and you can write 100 books, 1,000 books. You can write books that so many of us feel like, oh, I really like this book and the way it was written. We're not talking about the quality of the information if it's factual. We're just talking about what a person likes and feels emotionally. That just doesn't work. History of our species don't evolve from just staying one way, eating one food, living in one place, worshiping one type of deity, worshiping a deity at all. So we have to understand that stretches throughout every facet of life. Can't just go off of I feel like I just want to have this today. I want to have this type of information today fed to me. No. And I'm going to say it again. For those of us that fight against the institution of what we call racism and white supremacy in terms of creating your own narrative about a people, talking about what their history and what it is and what it isn't from your perspective. All these exonyms, Olmec ain't even a name. All of this stuff going on. Not to mention, it's so much that he didn't say, that he didn't mention that the Olmecs were very known for. we got to stop playing the game. So we got to understand who we are. We can't just go off of feel good. It just doesn't work. I see Robert Rand, man, he like Mike Tyson with the information, yo. he like, look, yeah, man. Well, y'all ain't got too much, man. We can go on and shut it down. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Oh, I see Scripture Rippers done came through the building. Okay. Yeah, we well aware of who we are over here as primarily West Africans. Well aware. Any of you other brothers got anything before we shut it down?
Nah, man, we can go ahead and close it down. We appreciate everybody for coming through. Peace, Robert Rand. Let me see what else in here. Peace to my brother Sabio. Peace to Everything is Everything, brother Zane, Iron Mike, brother Chill, Omar. Peace, y'all, man. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Hold on, you got a question in the chat, T'Challa. Hold on. What do you understand by West African? I'm not sure what you meant by that.
Yeah, I can give you two different of what I would assume he's asking until he clarifies. I hope he's still here. Peace to you. But I want to wait and see what would clarify what you're asking right now, because Robert Red going in, yo.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the brother's still in or not. Let's see. Give him a second though. Indian people encountered by Columbus were known as Palmetto people. Yeah, that's something I have to check out. So see that nah, up here he ain't see though. He's just using mainstream academia. What he supposed to do? Let me see. Are you talking genetics, geographically, or culturally? Because it's a bit vague. Well, before Brother T'Challa answer that, I'll say for me, I'm speaking on it all. Like they have no connection to these ancient American civilizations.
Right. And what I'm saying is based on, if you want to talk about genetics, what classifies a person as to being quote unquote any sort of African, right? And then just from specific parts of like Africa. It's, the haplogroup allows you to know when a person is on the timeline of existence. Okay, when that variation of human began to emerge from the evolutionary soup. We know that certain markers don't arrive in the genome until a certain period of time, i.e., certain people are not on the planet because their ancestors haven't walked to those places in the planet yet. They haven't gotten there yet. And geographically, so your genetics is going to be based upon what sort of vegetation is in the area in your environment, what sort of animals, meat you have access to, the weather conditions. Do you live in valleys? Do you live by rivers? All of these things culturally, as anybody who listens and watches our channel, you know that I speak on culture all the time as far as West Africa. And I don't know how much of the video you caught, but in the beginning I said specifically coastal West Africa. Definitely there's no connection. I'm touching on Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Mali, Guinea, no connection. So all of these things. Y'all go into the chat. Got that picture with the guys all chocolate and their feet showing and it's white. Yeah. So my question is, are you saying that, I mean, what by that line of questioning, what are you asking? Where are you getting to? Because it's well known that on all of those areas, genetics, geography, and culture, if you know anything about West Africa, truthfully, and you ain't trying to just make a dollar, you're not sitting up here talking about that there's some type of connection. Unless you know some archaeological discovery that all of academia and the entire world don't know. Now, I love a good journey to the center of the earth and Indiana Jones and National Treasure with the popcorn and the OG, but you know what I'm saying? It ain't happening in reality. Mm. Well, I don't know if the brother's still there, but
Either he left or he quiet.
all right, well,
Oh,
got it.
there you go.
Okay, so right, so I'm not. Again, when I speak of West Africa because I have knowledge further east, in West Africa, especially Ghana, Nigeria, Benin, Togo. Yeah, definitely. You've got a lot of West Africa that a lot of people don't speak on, and there's a lot of West Africa that we have spoken on. Like we've covered all over Africa actually. Um, I'm not sure if you're new to the channel, brother, but again, peace to you. And we encourage you to check out our archives. We done touch, bro. You want to talk about certain other areas of West Africa that is not being discussed right now. Brother on the panel, Sutek, goes in. No, you good. Ain't no, you ain't done nothing wrong. You came in, you was asking questions. I
Yeah, man.
understand.
You good? Subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, fam.
Yeah, it ain't nothing like that. I thought by your line of questioning that you know what I'm saying, and you still haven't expressed your views, and so if that's your views, you got the right to that. It's just that's I'd be like, look, we ain't finna play that game. If you got sources, we can come on with it. But we touch on all over Africa. Um, and specifically, Kofi Piesie research team, if you want to hear somebody talking about West Africa, you came to the right place. We get it in. Mossi Warrior Clan, Amara Squad, yeah, we get it in. Mm-hmm. Make sure you subscribe. And if there's no other commentary, we're gonna shut it down.
Yeah. We go ahead and cut it right here, man. Yeah, bro. Make sure you subscribe, my brother. Chris Spector. Yeah, we go live on topics and issues like this all the time. So you'll definitely have some content, chill and relax to uh, take some notes on. But yeah, man, we appreciate everybody for coming through, man. We'll get out of here. I'm gonna play y'all out.
Log in to KofiPiesieTV.com and get Spears of the Mossi Volume 1 by Kofi Piesie Research Team, from Spears the Pen Volume 2 by Kofi Piesie Research Team, Spiritual Combat Volume 3 by Kofi Piesie Research Team, One Night Before Bed by Herit, Shawn, Khalfani, Kalawa's Trip to the Motherland by Kofi Piesie, From Cocaine to Consciousness by Herit, Shawn, Khalfani, As I Learned, We All Learn by Kofi Piesie. Also, if you want fresh merch, go to our online store, Family Connect Apparel, and get all the brands. Also, get our 54 deck of quiz and educational cards available now on KofiPiesieTV.com.